Hello everyone, Messy Plays here. Thank you for joining me. This is the second part of my list of the worst to best episodes of Black Mirror Season 4, so I hope you enjoy it. So at number 3 on the list, we have Metalhead. This has been quite a divisive episode again, but I really liked it. A lot of reviewers have kind of picked up on the fact that this feels the least like a Black Mirror episode, and maybe the most free of kind of tropes and similar concepts. This episode is more like a kind of tense horror film. A brief overview is that we have 3 human characters. They don't really go into the names, but one's called Bella, one's called Clark, one's called Anthony. They start in kind of a car in the middle of rural grasslands. They talk about how the pigs used to exist, but they were all killed by the dogs. They never explain what the dogs are, but we meet them quite soon into the episode. They're trying to get something for the sister of Bella who died. Something that they said would make her child's last days feel like more pain-free. And that kind of builds up a concept in our head of, well, is it medication they need? They said they need batteries as well. So they were going to a warehouse that would be full of supplies. Immediately as they break in, they encounter this, they call it the dog. It sprays them with trackers. It follows them relentlessly. It kills without mercy. The entire episode is mainly without dialogue. It's very short. It's one of the shortest episodes in the series. It's about 40 minutes, so it's completely stripped down. There's no lore, there's no backstory. We don't get information on how this world got to this point, and that's why I liked the episode. It wasn't bogged down with explaining to the audience, this is like this because of this. The final shot, which is... it's meant to give us a kind of a taste of the desperation going on, is that the object they were trying to get, the object they were willing to die for, is a teddy bear. Now, people have postulated that this might tie into another episode. I don't think so. I think it shows how kind of savage and merciless the world is, where they just are willing to die to get a teddy bear for a child because... fuck it, he's going to die anyway. We're all going to die anyway. I thought that was a pretty brave decision. I think a lot of people feel like it was cheap and it was just, oh, well, they needed a twist. I didn't see it as a twist. Like, not everything on Black Mirror is a fucking twist. It was icing on the kind of decoration of this weird-ass plot. Obviously, the episode is black and white. I think technical reasons they did this is to make the CG more seamless. Obviously, when you've got something bouncing around amongst human characters, especially with a TV budget, and you've got it's probably 20 minutes of animation to do. It's not going to look the best thing in the world, but in the black and white, in 4K, it looked amazing. It was seamless, and it was so savage. You get this just horrible, unnerving feeling when it was coming after you, and you felt powerless against it. It's obviously based on the designs of kind of Boston Dynamics robots, 4-legged things they're making. I think they're making them for army purposes, so there is a kind of grounding in reality there. So like I said, I love this episode. I love how little it explains. It's a tense, thrilling ride. It feels like what a Terminator film should be. So for most of the reasons I think other people dislike the episode, I like it, but that's obviously personal preference. So yeah, at number 3, I would say Metalhead. At number 2, we have Crocodile. This again has been another controversial episode. A lot of people have very diverse opinions on this one. A lot of people rank it at the lowest end of the kind of spectrum for season 4. Me personally, I thought this was a really strong episode. It's one of the bleakest and darkest episodes that Black Mirror has ever attempted. I'll just give a brief overview. It stars Andrea Riseborough and Andrew Gower as Mia and Rob. They are driving along. It's never really described exactly where it is. We know it's filmed in Iceland, but there's a lot of signs pointing to the fact that it's Britain. Like, there's a lot of, everyone speaks English, there's a lot of British signs around. So that they think it was just a stand-in and they wanted a cold and bleak background. But basically, they're driving home after a night of drinking, and they accidentally kill a cyclist, agreeing that they should just cover it up and bury the body and move on with their lives. They do that. 15 years later, Mia has moved on considerably. She's got a son and a husband, and she's doing really well in her kind of professional life. And she's visited by Rob, who's, disheveled. He hasn't been able to move on from this event. And he's read in the paper that the wife of the dead cyclist wants to continue looking for her husband because she believes him to be alive. And this has caused great distress to him. And he's like, I should write a letter to her to let her know what we did, because it's not right that we're still kind of sitting on this dead body. Now, Mia obviously is taken aback by this, because she's like, yeah, that's easy for you to do because you have nothing to lose. You're at the bottom of the barrel. So, it's me that'll lose everything. They'll trace the letter. I'll, lose my career, lose my husband, lose my child. And one thing leads to another in this confrontation between the two, and she kills the driver of the car, Rob. So one thing leads to another. She covers up this body. In the meantime, she drags this body to a car to bury it. But before that happens, she sees a kind of pizza delivery truck, an automated one, on the street knock over this guy. Now, this is pretty important because it brings in the kind of technological relevance to this episode. They have this device that allows a insurance adjuster to see people's memories to see if they're lying during a kind of confession. So this guy that was hit by the pizza truck is trying to claim money from the pizza company, saying, obviously, this driverless car was defective and it hit me. So instead of just taking his word for it, they put this device on his head and they see his memories on his screen. Now, it's slightly different from the entire history of you, because you can try and manipulate your memories. You can try and lie to yourself and omit certain memories. They obviously didn't want to do the eye camera thing again, but it's very, very similar. They made the device quite old looking, very retro. I liked it. It was quite cool. It's got like a speckly effect on the screen. Like your memories are kind of phasing in and out. You have to smell certain smells and listen to music to transport yourself to the moment they want you to recollect. So I was really interested in the kind of technology side of this. Mia obviously kills Rob, buries the body, thinks she's gotten away with it, and just by happenstance is contacted by this insurance adjuster to get her recollections of this man getting hit by a pizza truck. So it's one of those kind of complete coincidental things that leads about down this path of endless destruction. She ends up inadvertently confessing to this insurance adjuster that she killed Rob that night. So she kills the insurance adjuster. She then goes to her house and kills her husband. And then this is a huge spoiler, she realizes that they had a child. And because anyone with eyes can have their memories recalled, she kills the child. So this episode is hugely dark. There's been theories on what the crocodile of the title stands for. Some people think it's because she cries a lot during the episode, but she's obviously a stone cold killer that she cries crocodile tears. She's not really feeling emotion. She's just trying to exhibit emotion. She's trying to, exhibit sympathy when inside she's a monster. Some people theorize it's because the machine, it opens like a set of jaws. I feel like it's probably a combination of things. Also, a crocodile kind of swims slowly and has its eyes and snout out the water and is very calm until it strikes. It kind of gives you a false impression of their character, but then once they're close enough to you, they strike. I feel like that's probably the implication behind it. There's been a lot of talk about accents in this, and this one annoys me. Obviously, Andrea Riseborough she's from where I'm from, actually, Newcastle upon Tyne. So I was pretty proud of that, and they didn't ask her to cover up her accent. And of course, you have a lot of international viewers saying, I can't understand this. Like, I need to turn the subtitles on. And it's like, you know what? You always point this out that you just cannot understand any fucking accent that's like not from the south of England, the south of Britain. And it's like you're proud of it. And I could tell you maybe like 10 to 15 separate accents from America or, other countries because I make an effort to actually listen and understand. So I would be able to discern a southern accent, a New York accent, East Coast, West Coast, because I make an effort to try and understand those different cultures and be like accepting of them. So when it's a case of, oh well, I just don't care because that isn't a London accent, so I don't care to listen. Let's put subtitles on. Let's just complain about it. I just think, well, you're exposing yourself as kind of ignorant, like you. So that's just a mini rant about that. I'm not being 100% serious, but I was pretty proud that they left that accent in. I think Rob is from Merseyside, maybe Liverpool, and he had a bit of an accent as well. There is a slight twist at the end of this episode. I wouldn't call it a major twist. People think it's dumb and maybe cliche. Obviously, the proper police have a version of I'll call it the crocodile equipment that works on animals. And because there was a guinea pig in the room when she killed the kid, they can extract the memory from an animal. And it did seem like a kind of neat wrap up to the action she had done. I didn't mind it, but I think a lot of people think, oh, well, that's just a lame twist that they just wanted to put in there. I didn't see it like that. I thought it was I was focused more on the journey, and I found it really compelling. That kind of, that films like Very Bad Things, where trying to cover up a small mistake will always kind of inevitably lead you down a bigger path of self-destruction. You have to stop it at some point. You have to stop covering lies with lies and just admit that this is your doing. Kind of face the music. I thought that was the theme of the episode. I found it really entertaining. It had gorgeous cinematography. It had a really kind of, I think they call it, I'm sorry if I'm butchering this, but like Icelandic noir. There's a kind of culture of TV from maybe Iceland where they have these really noirish kind of melancholic crime thrillers. And I haven't seen many of them, but I feel like a previous episode, the one with the bees, what was that called? Hated in the Nation, had a feeling like that as well, a kind of noir procedural theme to it. And I love those episodes. So I really, really liked this one. I loved how dark it went. I loved the self-destruction, the self-destruction and the external destruction that really came together for me. So I loved this episode. So I have Crocodile at number 2. So at number 1, I have the last episode of the season, Black Museum. This is kind of the yin and yang to another episode, which was a kind of extended special way back when Channel 4 had the rights, and this was like a standalone shown at Christmas. That was called White Christmas, and it had 3 separate stories that kind of culminated in the overarching story. Little elements from each one was used in the main storyline. So this one is it's not influenced by that, but it kind of feels like a sequel to that one. A brief overview is this guy called Rollo Haynes runs a museum in the middle of the desert that this girl called Nish turns up at while she's exploring, we presume, and she needs to charge her car. So she goes into the museum. Rollo refers to it as a kind of a museum of criminal artifacts with a kind of technological bent to them. There's a lot of Easter eggs to previous episodes. There's too many to list. Like immediately you see a mugshot of the woman from, is it White Bear? The girl that's like tortured continuously. You see one of the shooter balaclavas with the symbol on from White Bear. You see the bathtub in this episode. From the previous episode, I talked about Crocodile. You see the headgear from, I can't remember, is it Archangel or USS Callister? Everything is in there. This is one for Black Mirror fans. So if you're watching the other episodes, a few people have mentioned this. Watch this one last because it's kind of like it kind of does feel like a kind of like an epic finale to the entire series. And I hope it isn't, but it does feel like Charlie Brooker was kind of going meta with this episode. He was writing an insert for himself, coming up with all these stories. He had all these stories connected to all these artifacts inside this museum. I really hope it isn't the end of Black Mirror because I love the show. But if it is, then it was a perfect way to end it. Now, there's 3 storylines contained within this episode. I'll try and go through them briefly. The first one is written by Penn Jillette, and he is obviously from Penn and Teller, the stand-up magicians. This one is a really weird and dark episode about a doctor that uses a kind of implant to allow him to experience the pain sensation his patients are feeling. So they used this with the idea that he would be able to feel what they're feeling, and if they couldn't describe the pain sufficiently enough, he would be able to understand what they're experiencing and diagnose it quicker. So you'll be able to understand what, liver disease feels like, or kidney stones, or, a urinary infection or whatever. Now, there's a really good bit where he's kind of using this more and more, and he's getting more used to it, and he experiences death while wearing it. A guy is poisoned, and he experiences that death. And the implication is that it rewires his brain. Now his brain is kind of fucked up, and it craves the sensation of pain. It becomes like a BDSM chaser. So he actually wants to wear the headgear when people are coming in pain. He's taking shifts at the hospital when he doesn't need to. He gradually gets banned from the hospital because they feel like he's obviously losing the plot. And then he starts to experiment on himself. And this is probably one of the most gorish aspects of any episode, is when he starts to cut his fingers off and he's drilling into himself. And it's horrific, but it's so well established. This episode in general has a real Tales from the Crypt. Every episode has a Twilight Zone vibe, but this one especially has a kind of, we are camping this up. We are making this a meta episode about Black Mirror. Everything is going to be dialed up to 11, so don't take this seriously. And a lot of reviewers, I don't think, have picked up on that, and they've given it a bad review saying this one feels like a parody of itself. It was like, were you watching the episode? Did you not realize that this is Charlie Brooker himself talking about, taking the piss out of his own show? So the doctor gradually tries to kill like a kind of vagrant, and he gets caught. So that was the end of that mini episode. The next one is about a couple who have a child, and I can't remember what happened. I think she gets hit by a car and she's put into a permanent coma. And Rollo Haynes, who he comes into each episode, he's like the devil. He comes in a suit and he's got a really big smile on his face. He's got greasy hair, and he comes into these scenarios where people are kind of down on the luck, or they're hitting a wall, and he's like, by the way, do you want me to grant you a wish? And there's a really cool vibe to him. He works for this mysterious company, which I feel like is going to become the kind of the Weyland-Yutani of this world. I think people are going to start connecting every episode to this company. I think it's called TDKR. And apparently they made the technology for San Junipero, and they made the technology for several other things, probably the entire history of you. So I think people are going to start theorizing that maybe they're connected to, the old gods or something like this. Whatever. I'm sure Charlie Brooker loves that kind of. So anyway, he offers this couple down on the luck. Obviously, she's in a coma. And he's visiting her, raising their child. He offers them a kind of a stopgap solution of a box that can indicate what she's thinking. It'll give like a yes, no response, a light on, a light off. So they're using that to communicate while she's in the coma. And then he's like, by the way, there's the next step to this. What we can do is we can make her pass over. We can extract her consciousness and put it inside your brain. He brings up that kind of old tropey line of you only use 40% of your brain. Obviously, this is Charlie Brooker taking the piss out of films that say shit like that. I know some Scarlett Johansson film got a lot of shit for saying that line. So they offer to put her mind inside his mind, and then, the mother and father will be together for their child. He doesn't even hesitate to do this, to be honest. So it begins kind of comedically, like they'll be reading a comic book and she'll be saying to him, "Why are you turning the pages so slow?" And he's like, "Well, I'm a slow reader." They start to argue inside their mind. She tells him to wash his hands when he's in the bathroom. It's kind of those old campy horror TV episodes where they'll get a head transplant and then the heads are arguing with each other constantly. That was definitely what Charlie Brooker was going for here. So gradually he starts to get annoyed by her. Of course he would. He starts to notice this girl that's moved in next door, and they give him the option to periodically turn her off and on. She won't experience the downtime, but when she comes back online, she'll notice that time has passed. So the first time he does it, he turns her off and turns her back on, and she notices pumpkins in the background. She's like, "Why is the pumpkins in like March?" And he's like, "It's not March." And she's like, "You turned me off for months." So they can't come to a compromise, and they offer to put her inside a teddy bear. And there's a really funny bit where his new girlfriend kind of threatens this teddy bear, because this teddy bear can only communicate with two phrases like, "I love you" and "I need a hug," like a positive and a negative response. So there's just a lot of funny humor in this episode like that. That episode ends. I can't remember how it ends. Basically, the child plays with this teddy bear who is his mother technically. And obviously that episode isn't that far removed from White Christmas, where, they put someone's AI inside an egg. So that definitely wasn't too far-fetched for Black Mirror. So the third part of this episode is where it started to lose me a little bit and where it ties into the main plot going on. It transpires that inside the Black Museum, he has a kind of digital version of this inmate who is kept alive perpetually to be electrified by visitors to the museum. They can kill an innocent guy that was on death row who was blamed for a murder, and people get a kick out of seeing this hologram prisoner get electrocuted that can take little souvenirs of him screaming. Obviously, this whole thing was played up. This one lost me a bit because obviously it's very similar to White Bear, where they torture a girl every night. She gets electrocuted as well, towards the end to lose her memory. It just didn't look that good. It stretched believability, even though obviously this one was meant to be completely bonkers to begin with. But I just wasn't that interested in it as a concept. I saw the twist coming as well when I saw him in there, and obviously he's black and the main girl and it was black. I was like, well, she looks young enough to be his daughter, so this is probably a kind of I'll rescue him, I'll free him kind of plot. And the turn Rollo Haynes into a kind of absolute villain at this point, I didn't like that. I thought it was unnecessary. I felt like he was a kind of a neutral evil up to that point. He had kept things in his possession that were obviously really fucked up and weird. But like he said, he had the teddy bear, that mother, and she was still alive in there. But he said it was illegal to kill her. So he has that kind of, hey, this is probably morally wrong, but I'm still, legally right. And I just enjoyed his character as a kind of mustache twirling villain. And then when they flip the script on him and have him get killed, I just thought, I didn't need to see this. But I guess it's fair enough. I think I would have liked to have seen him pop up again. I think his character might be in it again, and maybe a prequel. Maybe they kept him alive as an AI. But I thought it was a shame. I thought at the beginning that maybe the entire thing would be a simulation. It seems so random for her to be driving in the middle of nowhere. I thought they might be inside a brain or something. But apart from that, I really, really loved this episode. This is probably one of my favorite episodes of Black Mirror. It was so fucked up, so gory, so funny, random. It had everything I wanted out of the show. And I think it would be a perfect way to end it. I hope they are doing season 5. I know Charlie Brooker is probably working himself to death writing these scripts, 6 kind of finalized, completely independent storylines every year with, new casts, new locations, new characters. But I hope you can pull it off, man, because I'm really excited for season 5. I hope that does drop next year. I wouldn't be surprised if you need a break and it drops in maybe 2019 or 2020. But well done, man. I loved this season. Only Archangel was kind of mediocre to me, but apart from that, it was perfect. So hope you enjoyed this video, guys. If you did, please like, comment, and subscribe, and catch me next time for some more videos. Goodbye, guys.